Hey, it's 3.1. Our learning objective is students will be able to understand the historical context and setting of two books by Peter Raiser. So you are going to read one of two books, either While the Locust Slept, a memoir by Peter Raiser, or Weejiwaganug, More Than Brothers, also by Peter Raiser. So let's get started. We'll give you some background information here on Peter Raiser. He is the author, and he was born in 1928. He passed away at the age of 94 in 2022. He published While the Locust Slept at the age of 72. And so he became a first-time author at the age of 72. After his children were asking him stories about his childhood, and he started telling them, remembering them, and writing them down. His father was from the Fond du Lac band of Minnesota, Chippewa, Anishinaabe, Ojibwe. These, by the way, are all the same thing. It's the same American Indian tribe. It's just different ways to say their name. So you'll see Chippewa, Anishinaabe, and Ojibwe all used. But Peter was born in St. Paul, not Fond du Lac Indian Reservation, and soon after became a ward of the state. When it was decided his parents were, and he was a ward of the state because it was decided that his parents could no longer care for him. He spent the next 14 years at the state public school at Owatonna, which was a residential and educational facility that operated from 1886 to 1945. So you'll hear about, if you're reading While the Locust Slept, you'll hear a lot about this school and this time in Owatonna. Peter tries to run away while at the school to find relatives north and makes it all the way to Superior, Wisconsin, but he is caught before he can find them. At age 15, he was moved to indentured farm placement on a farm near Houston, Minnesota, near the Wisconsin border, where he worked in a farm where he lived and went to high school. They moved shortly afterwards to neighboring Caledonia, where he worked and went to school. And so right now in your notes, I want to give you some information about the two books as if they had a license. Okay, so if you're reading Weejiwaganug, the name is Weejiwaganug. The genre is historical fiction. So it's fiction meaning it's made up, it's not the absolute truth. Historical meaning it's based on some things that happened a long time ago that the author then investigated and included in his book. The author is Peter Raiser. The publisher is the Michigan State University Press, and the book was published in 2023. If you're reading While the Locust Slept, here is that book's license. It's called While the Locust Slept. The genre is memoir, which is a kind of autobiography. So it's about the author's own life. So it's a true story. And it's by Peter Raiser also. This one was published by the Minnesota Historical Society in 2001. So let's talk a little bit more about Peter's heritage as a member of the Fond du Lac band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. In Minnesota, there are 6 Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Ojibwe bands and 4 Dakota Sioux communities. So this map shows the reservations, and some are in the northern part that are kind of cut off here in this image. But you can see where the Fond du Lac band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, that is where Peter Raiser, where his family was from. Of course, he was born in St. Paul. This is where he spent much of his childhood at that state school in Owatonna. And he was there really from sometime in his second year of life, so at age 1, all the way to age 15. So he was born in St. Paul, brought here, taken away from parents, and brought here and spent most of his childhood there. He then works, at one point he, and if you read While the Locust Slept, you'll hear all about this, escapes the state school and makes it all the way to Superior. So you can see that's very close to the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Reservation. He, at age 15, is placed on farm placement and works at a farm from ages 15 to 18 in Rushford, Houston, and Caledonia. So I just want to give you some visual images about where this takes place. And then just a little bit more about the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior Chippewa. Here you can see all of those reservations that I listed. The Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior Chippewa is a band of Anishinaabe Indians. Their land base is the Fond du Lac Indian Reservation, 20 miles west of Duluth, which was established by the 1854 treaty. All Indian tribes have names for themselves. The largest Indian group in Minnesota calls itself Anishinaabe, which translates to the original people. And so that's their name for themselves. Later, Europeans named them Ojibwe and also Chippewa. So both of these names, or all three of these names, Ojibwe, Chippewa, and Anishinaabe, refer to the same tribe of American Indians. Okay, it isn't until Peter is an adult that he learns about his heritage and cultural roots. He studies his Indian culture, his roots, and found it beautiful, he says on page 197 of While the Locust Slept, by reading the book Chippewa Customs by Francis Densmore and others. And so you can see the cover of that book here. From Densmore's book, he learned that his great-grandmother, Ms. Frank Razor of the White Earth Reservation, was well known for her beadwork. And he also then learned from elders, tribal elders, when the book could take him no further and give him no further education, and learned from them about traditional customs. He enrolled as a member of the Fond du Lac Band of Ojibwe, where he learned to dance and participated regularly in powwows. And this was all after he was an adult. He did all of this work on his own. You may have noticed hearing a land acknowledgement, hearing about the native land we're on at the beginning of different events, ceremonies, and concerts here in Hennepin County. Cooper High School, like all government institutions in this country, is on what was once or still is native land. But governments and institutions are only now starting to acknowledge this fact, some with a formal land acknowledgement ceremony. Others are even going back to native names for places like Bede-Makaska, formerly known as Lake Calhoun, named after John C. Calhoun, a former vice president and proponent of slavery and of Native American removal in 1800s. Similar to how land and names were taken away from Native people, Peter lost any knowledge of his connection to his native culture by being removed from it at an early age, like many other Native children, in what is called the Indian boarding schools. And those were operating from 1879 to the 1970s. And it's a really dark chapter in American history. These schools, also called industrial schools, were institutions that prepared boys for manual labor and farming, and girls for domestic work. The boarding school, whether on or off a reservation, carried out the government's mission to restructure Indians' minds and personalities by severing children's physical, cultural, and spiritual connections to their tribes. And so the idea is that keeping them away from home, physical and cultural and spiritual connections would restructure their way of thinking and completely alter who they are. And in a lot of ways it did. Captain Richard H. Pratt said in 1879 that the goal of these industry schools was to kill the Indian, save the man. While the schools are not actually in the book we're reading, they are very similar, and they were influenced by this idea of kill the Indian and save the man. The schools themselves forced tens of thousands of Native American children to leave their families and culture behind. And the state school in Owatonna worked in a lot of ways much like these boarding schools. However, the state school in Owatonna had both Native American students and white students. And Peter is just one of a few Native American students. Most of them are white. The U.S. government's duty, according to Captain Richard H. Pratt, was to Americanize Native children. And you can see that, this has hurt, you can see how this may have hurt children as well, right? Well, we'll see firsthand in the books that we're reading how it does hurt the children. We have some key themes in the book. The first is growing up in the margins. This means moving from childhood to adulthood, from innocence to experience. Being in the margins means occupying a position or identity that is pushed to the edges of mainstream society. People who are marginalized people are disadvantaged due to various factors such as race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, class, disability, or other social identities. Standing up to oppression is our second theme. Oppression is the unjust or cruel exercise of power and authority over people to keep them powerless. It looks like discrimination, individual acts of prejudice, and violence. It also can come in the form of systemic oppression, where the injustices can't be clearly linked to it, where the injustices can't be clearly linked. And so it seems like there's no injustice from just one person, but in reality, it's an entire system that is oppressing the individual. The subjectivity of truth is our third theme. Peter's truth is often different from the official truth, and we'll see that in this book. So who gets to tell the truth? Who has the truth? And in order to learn all of the truth, Peter Raiser had to go back and use state documents that he finds, which are sometimes surprisingly accurate, and the memories that he has, which are often absent from the state documents, in order to make sense of his story. And so he'll give us both of those in While the Locust Slept. His truth is somewhere in between the lines, which he ends up using to validate his experience on the one hand and challenging the system on the other. Here are a couple of photos of Peter Raiser as a young child. They're actually the only pictures that exist of his childhood besides the ones at the state school. All right, thank you for taking notes. This video got a bit long, and welcome to our Peter Raiser unit.